Ambassador Jin Woo walked through the damaged corridors of Nexus Station for the second time in 6 months. The walls were scarred with blast marks from hive attacks, and emergency repair crews worked around the clock to keep the station functioning. The air recycling systems made strange noises, and the artificial gravity flickered occasionally, making everyone feel slightly dizzy. The meeting room where the emergency council session was being held looked nothing like the grand chamber where Jin Woo had walked out months earlier. Half the seats were empty because those species no longer existed. The surviving delegates sat hunched over their data tablets looking like refugees, rather than the proud representatives of galactic civilizations. When Jin Woo entered the room, every conversation stopped. The aliens who had once laughed at human diplomacy now watched him with desperate hope and barely concealed fear. They knew that humanity was their last chance for survival, and they were terrified that Jin Woo might walk out again. Counselor Vextar stood up slowly. His scales had turned almost black with stress, and his proud posture had been replaced by the slouch of defeat. "Ambassador Jin Woo," he said, in a voice that cracked with emotion, "we are grateful that you have returned. We know that we have no right to ask for your help after how we treated your people." Jin Woo took his seat at the human section of the table, the same chair where he had sat months ago when the aliens dismissed every human suggestion. Dr. So Young and Captain Yerin flanked him, but this time they were not the only humans in the room. General Do Hyun had come with a full military staff, and Dr. Min Ho had brought his team of scientists. The terms "I am about to present" are not negotiable. Jin Woo announced, his voice calm but firm. "When this war is over, the galaxy will be organized differently. No species will be considered superior to others based on how long they have traveled between stars. Every world gets an equal voice in galactic decisions." Blue mark. The Aldarian representative nodded frantically. "We agree to everything," she said quickly. "Whatever you want, we will give you. Please just save us from the hive." Jin Woo continued as if she had not spoken. "Human fleets will operate under human command using human tactics and human strategy. We will coordinate with your remaining forces, but we will not take orders from council commanders who have already proven they cannot defeat this enemy." Stone click made clicking sounds that the translator turned into desperate agreement. The Klaxon homeworld had been evacuated just hours before, and his entire civilization was scattered across a dozen refugee ships. "Yes, yes, anything you say. Just please stop the hive before they destroy everything." The most shocking demand came last. "When this war ends, Earth will serve as the capital of the new Galactic Assembly. The headquarters will be moved from Nexus Station to Luna Base. All major decisions affecting the galaxy will be made by representatives meeting in human space." The surviving council members looked at each other in stunned silence. They were being asked to give up thousands of years of political dominance and accept human leadership. But, with the hive advancing toward their last remaining strongholds, they had no choice. "We accept all your terms," Vextar said finally. "The Galactic Council hereby dissolves itself and transfers all authority to the new Galactic Assembly under human leadership." Jin Woo nodded and activated his communication device. "General Do Hyun, Project Phoenix is now authorized. Launch all fleets and begin the liberation of occupied worlds." What happened next shocked every alien observer. General Do Hyun had not brought a few human ships to reinforce the scattered council fleets. He had brought the entire human war machine that had been building in secret for 6 months. The space around Nexus Station suddenly filled with human vessels emerging from hyperspace jumps. Thousands of ships appeared in perfect formation, ranging from massive battleships that dwarfed anything the aliens had ever built to small fighter craft that moved like schools of fish through the void. Captain Yejin watched from the observation deck of the station as the human fleet deployed. She had spent years studying different species' military tactics, but had never seen anything like this. The human ships moved with perfect coordination, as if they were all controlled by a single mind. Every vessel knew exactly where to go and what to do without any apparent communication between them. The alien delegates crowded around the observation windows, staring at the human fleet in amazement. The ships were clearly built using technology from many different species, but somehow they all worked together seamlessly. Vextari shield generators powered Aldarian energy weapons, while Klaxon armor plating protected human crew compartments. But the most shocking revelation came when the human fleet engaged the first hive force. The aliens expected to see a massive battle with explosions and laser beams lighting up space. Instead, they witnessed something completely different. Dr. So-young stood at the main tactical display in the station command center explaining what was happening to the stunned alien observers. The human ships were not firing weapons at the hive bioships. Instead, they were broadcasting some kind of signal that made the enemy vessels stop moving. "Are not destroying the hive," she announced calmly. "We are communicating with them." The revelation sent shockwaves through the room. The aliens had been fighting the hive for centuries, assuming they were mindless destroyers, but humans had discovered something that changed everything. The hive was not evil or insane. They were terrified refugees running from something even worse. Dr. Minho activated a holographic display that showed the true history of the hive. Millions of years ago, they had been a collection of peaceful civilizations living in the outer rim of the galaxy. But something had come out of the dark space between galaxies. Something so terrible that entire species had chosen to become the hive rather than face it. The biological merging that created the hive was not conquest. It was desperate survival. The individual species had given up their separate identities to become something strong enough to run from their ancient enemy. For millions of years, they had been fleeing across the galaxy, consuming other civilizations not out of malice but out of fear. Humans had cracked the hive communication system and learned their story. But more importantly, human scientists had found the thing that had been chasing the hive. For so long it was still out there in the dark between galaxies, slowly following the hive trail of destruction. The ancient enemy was something that even the hive feared, a collection of machines left over from a civilization that had died billions of years ago. The machines had been programmed to eliminate all biological life and had been pursuing the hive across multiple galaxies. Instead of fighting the hive, humans offered them something no other species had ever considered: a permanent solution to their ancient problem. Human deep space exploration had located the machine fleet and developed a way to destroy it completely. General Du-hyun broadcast the human offer directly to every hive vessel in the galaxy. The message was simple: humanity would eliminate the ancient machine threat that had been chasing the hive for millions of years. In exchange, the hive would stop their attacks and help rebuild the worlds they had damaged. The response was immediate. Every hive ship in the galaxy stopped attacking and began withdrawing from occupied territories. The bioships that had seemed unstoppable just days before now followed human fleet commanders toward the edge of known space, where the real enemy waited. Captain Ye-jin joined the combined human and hive fleet as they traveled to the dark space between galaxies. The journey took weeks, but when they arrived, they found something that made even the hive ships tremble with fear. A massive fleet of ancient machines, each one the size of a small moon stretching across light years of empty space. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships and hive bioships fighting side by side against an enemy that had terrorized multiple galaxies. The machines were powerful, but they had not adapted or evolved in billions of years. Their ancient programming made them predictable. Human tactics combined with hive biological weapons proved to be the perfect combination. The machines fell one by one until the last of the ancient fleet was destroyed. The threat that had driven the hive across the universe was finally ended. When the combined fleet returned to inhabited space, they found a galaxy ready for change. The surviving alien species welcomed both humans and the hive as saviors rather than conquerors. The new Galactic Assembly held its first meeting on Earth, with representatives from hundreds of worlds, including former hive entities who had chosen to maintain individual identities. Ambassador Jinwoo stood before the assembly in the great hall that had been built in the Swiss Alps overlooking the lake, where human diplomacy had first been practiced. The room was filled with beings from across the galaxy, but for the first time they were all equals. "We have learned that the universe is vast and full of dangers that no single species can face alone," he announced to the assembled delegates. "But we have also learned that cooperation and understanding can overcome any threat. The age of galactic unity begins today." The applause that followed came from hundreds of different types of hands, claws, tentacles, and appendages, but the sound was the same: the galaxy celebrating its survival, and the beginning of a new era where wisdom mattered more than age. Technology mattered less than cooperation, and no species would ever again have to face the darkness alone. Counselor Vextar stood in the ruins of what had once been the greatest meeting hall in the galaxy. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was being held in a damaged conference room on Nexus Station, because half of the original council chambers had been destroyed by hive attacks. The walls were cracked and some of the floating lights had stopped working, leaving dark shadows across the room. Only 30 species remained out of the original 80 that had formed the Galactic Council. The others had either been completely destroyed by the hive or had fled to distant parts of the galaxy, where they hoped to hide until the war was over. The surviving delegates looked tired and scared. Their proud uniforms were wrinkled and dirty. Many of them had not slept properly in days. Vextar looked around the room at faces that showed fear instead of the arrogance he remembered from just a few months ago. The Aldarian representative Bluemark had dark circles under her eyes, and her usually perfect blue skin looked pale and sickly. The Klaxon delegate Stone Click made nervous clicking sounds constantly, and his forearms trembled when he tried to hold his data tablets. "We have lost over 60% of our combined military," Forces Vextar announced to the room. His voice was hoarse from giving too many emergency briefings. "The hive has destroyed 47 major colonies and is advancing toward the core worlds. If current projections are correct, they will reach our home systems within 3 weeks." The room was silent except for the quiet humming of damaged life support systems and the occasional sound of explosions in the distance as hive scouts probed the station's defenses. Nobody wanted to speak, because everyone knew what Vextar was going to say next. "We need to contact the humans." He continued, and the words seemed to burn his throat as he spoke them. "They are the only military force in the galaxy that has successfully resisted hive attacks." Several delegates jumped to their feet, shouting in different languages. The translation machine struggled to keep up with all the angry voices at once. The Aldarian Bluemark stood on her chair, waving her arms frantically. "Those primitives cannot help us," she screamed. "What could they possibly do that our advanced civilizations cannot accomplish?" An older Vextari named Scalewise, who served as military advisor, stood up slowly. His scales were gray with age, and several scars crossed his face from old battles. "The humans destroyed 3 full hive battle groups that approached their territory," he said quietly. "Every ship, every scout, every probe that enters human space simply vanishes. We have no idea how they are doing it." The room erupted in arguments again. Some delegates insisted that the humans were just hiding behind some kind of defensive barrier. Others claimed that the hive was avoiding human space for unknown strategic reasons. A few suggested that humans had made some kind of deal with the enemy captain. Yejin had just returned from a reconnaissance mission near the Sol system. She entered the meeting room, carrying a datapad with her latest report. Her patrol ship, Swift Arrow, was one of the few vessels fast enough to get close to human space and return safely. "I observed the destruction of Hive Battle Group 7, she announced to the shocked delegates. The group consisted of over 200 bioships, including several of the new super heavy variants. They entered the Sol system at 800 Standard Time. By 0830, every single ship had disappeared from all sensors." She activated the holographic projector in the center of the room. The display showed sensor readings from her ship tracking the Hive battle group as it approached Earth. The red dots representing enemy vessels moved in perfect formation toward the human homeworld. Then suddenly, the dots began disappearing one by one until the display showed empty space. There was no explosion, no debris, no energy signatures that would indicate weapons fire. The hive ship simply ceased to exist. It was as if they had been erased from reality itself. Several delegates made religious gestures or spoke prayers in their native languages. Bluemark stood up again, but her voice was quieter now. "Maybe the humans have developed some kind of new weapon technology," she suggested. "We should offer them trade agreements, technology exchanges, scientific cooperation. They will surely agree to help us if we offer them advanced alien knowledge." Vextar shook his head sadly. "We have already tried that approach. The Council sent diplomatic messages to Earth offering everything from star charts to fusion reactor designs. The human response was always the same. They would defend their own space in their own way. Nothing more. Stone Click made frantic clicking sounds as he spoke through his translator. The Klaxon homeworld is under direct attack, he announced. My people are evacuating to the outer colonies, but the hive will follow us there. The great cities that have stood for 10,000 years are burning. We cannot survive another week without help. Similar reports came from delegates around the room. The Aldarian research station on Kepler Prime had gone silent 3 days ago. The Vextari mining operations in the Centauri sector were being overrun. The smaller species that had joined the Council for protection were sending desperate pleas for military assistance that nobody could provide. Dr. Minho was monitoring all Council communications from his laboratory on Mars. The Human Intelligence Network had been watching the alien panic unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and pity. The same species that had dismissed human capabilities were now begging for human intervention. He walked into General Do Hyun's office carrying reports from across the galaxy. General, the Council has lost almost everything. Their fleets are scattered, their colonies are burning, and their leaders are beginning to panic. Some of the smaller species are already talking about unconditional surrender to the hive. General Do Hyun studied the tactical displays that covered the walls of his office. The holographic maps showed the hive advance as a spreading red stain across the galaxy. Only one small section remained untouched, the area around Earth and human colonies. They still do not understand, he said quietly. They think this is about politics and trade agreements. They believe they can negotiate their way out of extinction. They have no idea what we are really fighting. The truth was that humanity had discovered something about the hive that the other species had never realized. The aliens saw the hive as an external threat to be fought with bigger weapons and stronger defenses. But human scientists had learned that the hive was not really an enemy in the traditional sense. They were something much more complex and dangerous. Dr. So Young had spent months studying captured hive specimens and had made a breakthrough discovery. The hive was not a single species or even a collection of species working together. They were something that had once been many different civilizations, but had been changed into something else entirely. The bioships were not built. They were grown from the remains of conquered worlds. The most disturbing part of her research was the realization that the hive retained memories and knowledge from every civilization they had absorbed. They knew how Vextari technology worked because they had destroyed Vextari colonies centuries ago. They understood Aldarian battle tactics because they had consumed Aldarian worlds in the distant past. This meant that traditional military responses were useless against them. The hive had fought and defeated thousands of different species over millions of years. They had learned from every victory and adapted to every defensive strategy. The aliens were trying to fight an enemy that already knew all their weaknesses. Meanwhile, the Council continued sending increasingly desperate messages to Earth. Each communication offered more concessions and greater rewards. The latest message had arrived that morning, offering to make Earth the capital of a new galactic government. With humans as the dominant species, Ambassador Jin Wu read the message from his office in Geneva on Earth. The same aliens who had laughed at human diplomats were now promising them control of the galaxy in exchange for military assistance. The irony was not lost on him, but he felt no satisfaction in their desperation. He composed a brief reply and sent it through the diplomatic channels. The message was simple. The Galactic Council chose to handle this crisis without human input. We respect that decision and will continue to defend our own space. The response caused panic throughout. What remained of the Council delegates began making frantic calls to their home governments, seeking permission to offer even greater concessions. Some suggested giving humans complete control of all Council military forces. Others proposed turning over entire star systems to human administration. But the humans remained silent. Their space continued to be a barrier that the hive could not cross, while the rest of the galaxy burned around them. The aliens, who had once considered themselves superior to humanity, were learning what it meant to face extinction alone. The final message that changed everything came from an unexpected source. The Klaxon homeworld was in its final hours before complete destruction. StoneClick sent a personal communication directly to Jin Woo, bypassing all official council channels. The message was just 3 sentences long. "We were wrong. The galaxy is dying. Please help us." For the first time since the crisis began, the human response was different. Jin Woo did not send another rejection. Instead, he sent a message that made every surviving alien leader hold their breath. Ambassador Jin Woo will return to Nexus Station to discuss terms. 3 months had passed since the humans walked out of the Galactic Council meeting. Admiral Taman stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dark Thunder, watching the sensor readings from human space. The massive ship floated at the edge of the neutral zone between Council territory and the Sol system, where Earth was located. The bridge was quiet except for the soft humming of computers and the occasional beeping of communication systems. The Dark Thunder was one of the most advanced ships in the Council fleet. It was over 2 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Admiral Taman had commanded it for 15 years and had never seen anything like what his sensors were showing him now. Lieutenant Jun Ho looked up from his station. His face was confused and a little worried. "Admiral, the energy readings from the human system are getting stronger every day. We are detecting massive construction projects, but we cannot tell what they are building." "Admiral." Taman walked over to look at the sensor display. The screen showed the Sol system as a collection of colored dots. Each planet was represented by a different color, and the space around them was filled with moving points of light that showed ships and space stations. 3 months ago, the display had looked normal, with a few dozen ships moving between planets and some small space stations orbiting Earth. Now the display looked completely different. There were hundreds of new contacts moving through the system. The space around Earth looked like a busy highway with ships going in every direction. Several of the outer planets showed massive energy signatures that suggested huge construction projects. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter was practically glowing with activity. "What worries me most, Admiral, is the communication silence," Junho continued. "We have tried every frequency and every protocol. The humans are not responding to any messages at all. It is like they have completely cut themselves off from the rest of the galaxy." Admiral Taman nodded slowly. He had been trying to contact the humans for weeks now. At first he thought they were just angry and needed time to cool down. But as the days passed and the energy readings grew stronger, he began to realize that something much bigger was happening. Captain Yejin commanded a smaller patrol ship called the Swift Arrow that operated closer to human space. She had been monitoring the border for the past month, and her reports were getting more interesting every day. Her ship was fast and quiet, which made it perfect for reconnaissance missions. From her position near the edge of the Sol system, Captain Yejin could see human ships moving in patterns that made no sense to her. There were convoys of massive cargo vessels heading toward the outer planets, followed by fleets of construction ships. Stranger still, there were new types of ships that she had never seen before. They were sleek and angular, with energy signatures that her computers could not identify. She tried sending friendly messages to some of the human vessels, but got no response. The ships would continue on their courses as if her messages had never been sent. A few times human patrol ships had approached her vessel, but they never tried to communicate. They would scan her ship with some kind of new sensor technology and then move away. The strangest thing was how organized everything looked. Captain Yejin had observed many different species building projects over the years, and they were usually chaotic, with ships getting in each other's way and construction delays causing problems. But the human construction projects moved like clockwork. Every ship knew exactly where to go and what to do. Back on Nexus Station, the Galactic Council was dealing with bigger problems. The hive attacks were getting worse, and without human reinforcements, several alien colonies had fallen. The Vextari had lost 2 mining worlds. In the past month, the Aldarians had been forced to evacuate 3 research stations. The Klaxons were struggling to defend their outer territories. Councillor Vextar paced back and forth in his private office. The walls were covered with tactical displays showing hive attack patterns across the galaxy. Red dots marked planets that had been destroyed or abandoned. Yellow dots showed colonies under attack. Green dots represented safe worlds, but there were fewer green dots every day. His assistant, a younger Vextari named Scalebright, entered the office with a data tablet. The latest reports from our scouts, Sir Scalebright said in the hissing voice that all Vextari used. The hive has destroyed the Kepler-7 colony and is moving toward the Centauri sector. If they continue at this pace, they will reach the core worlds within 6 months. Vextar stopped pacing and looked at the tactical display. The core worlds were where most of the advanced alien civilizations lived. If the hive reached them, the war would be over. What about the humans? Have they responded to our latest messages? Scale. Bright shook his head. No, sir. They continue to ignore all communication attempts. Our intelligence suggests they are building something massive in their home system, but we cannot determine what it is. Some of our analysts think they are preparing to flee to another galaxy. Meanwhile, in the Sol system, General Du Hyun stood in the command center of Luna Base, which had been built inside one of the moon's craters. The command center was a vast room filled with holographic displays showing every human colony ship and construction project in real time. Hundreds of technicians worked at computer stations coordinating the largest construction project in human history. Dr. Minho approached the general with a status report in his hands. The upgrade program is ahead of schedule. General, every ship in the fleet has been retrofitted with the new technology. The defensive platforms around Earth, Mars, and Luna are operational. The asteroid mining operations are producing materials faster than we can use them. General Du Hyun smiled grimly. The aliens had made a big mistake when they dismissed human capabilities. While they spent their time making speeches and arguing about protocol, humans had been quietly studying every piece of alien technology they could get their hands on. Human scientists had reverse-engineered Vextari shield generators, improved on Aldarian weapon systems, and learned from Klaxon defensive strategies. But humans had done something that none of the alien species had ever managed. They had combined all these different technologies into something completely new. The human fleet was no longer just human technology. With a few alien improvements, it was a fusion of the best ideas from across the galaxy, enhanced by human innovation and manufacturing capability. The secret was human manufacturing speed. While alien civilizations built their ships slowly over many months or even years, humans had developed automated shipyards that could produce vessels at incredible rates. The asteroid belt had been converted into a massive industrial complex, with mining ships, robots, and construction facilities working around. The clock project Phoenix was the name they had given to their plan. Phoenix was the mythical bird that rose from ashes stronger than before. Humanity had been burned by the arrogance of the Galactic Council, but they were rising from that defeat as something much more powerful. Dr. So Young worked in a laboratory deep beneath the surface of Mars, studying captured hive technology. The aliens had been fighting the hive for centuries, but they had never really tried to understand their enemy. They built bigger guns and stronger shields, but they never asked the important questions like where the hive came from or what they really wanted. Human scientists approached the problem differently. They studied hive biology, psychology, and behavior patterns. They analyzed the remains of destroyed hive ships and tried to understand how their technology worked. Most importantly, they looked for patterns in hive attacks and tried to predict what the enemy would do next. What they discovered was, disturbing the hive was not just randomly attacking colonies. They were following a specific pattern moving toward something in the center of the galaxy. The aliens had been so focused on fighting individual battles that they had missed the bigger picture. The hive scouts that had been probing human space over the past few months had provided valuable intelligence. Every time a hive ship approached the Sol system, human defenders captured or destroyed it, but not before downloading all the information from its computer systems. Slowly, humans were building a complete picture of hive capabilities and intentions. Admiral Tae-min received an urgent message from his scouts near human space. The message was short but alarming: human patrol. Ships had detected a small hive scouting force approaching the outer edge of the Sol system. The scouts expected to see a fierce battle, or perhaps the evacuation of human civilians. Instead, something impossible happened. The hive ships simply vanished. Every single vessel disappeared from all sensors simultaneously. There was no explosion, no debris, no distress signals. Nothing. The scout ships moved closer to investigate but found empty space where the hive force had been moments before Captain Yejin was close enough to witness the event. Her ship's sensors recorded everything but the data made no sense. One moment there were 12 hive bioships moving toward Earth. The next moment there was nothing. Her computer systems ran diagnostic checks assuming there must be some kind of malfunction. But all the equipment was working perfectly. She sent an urgent report to Admiral Taemin, who forwarded it to the Galactic Council. The message was simple, but terrifying. The Hive scouting force has been completely destroyed by unknown human weapons. Ambassador Jin Woo walked slowly through the long metal hallways of Nexus Station. The massive space station floated in the middle of nowhere between 3 different star systems. It was neutral ground where all the alien species could meet safely. The walls were made of some strange blue metal that seemed to glow with its own light. Jin Woo had been here for 5 days now, and he was getting very tired of the whole situation. The meeting room was huge with a circular table that could seat 200 beings. The ceiling was so high that Jin Woo could barely see the top even when he looked straight up. Strange floating lights moved around the room like tiny stars, giving everything an odd blue glow. The air smelled like flowers mixed with something chemical that made his nose itch. Jin Woo took his seat at the human section of the table. He was wearing his best diplomatic uniform, which was simple black with gold trim. Nothing too fancy, because humans had learned that showing off made the other species angry. Dr. So Young sat next to him wearing her military dress uniform. She was Earth's top military advisor, and one of the smartest people Jin Woo had ever met. Captain Yerin sat on his other side. She was young for a ship, captain, but had already fought in 12 battles against the Hive. The other species around the table looked like something from a strange dream. The Vextari were tall and looked like lizards walking on 2 legs. Their skin was dark green and covered in small scales that caught the light. Their eyes were bright yellow and never seemed to blink. Jin Woo always felt like they were staring right through him. The Aldarians had blue skin that seemed to shimmer and change color when they moved. They were about the same height as humans, but much thinner. Their heads were larger and they had no hair at all. Instead, they had strange marks on their foreheads that glowed softly. Jin Woo had learned that these marks showed their rank and family status. Klaxons were the strangest of all. They looked like giant insects with 4 arms and legs that bent in ways that made Jin Woo feel sick. Their eyes were huge and black, covering most of their faces. They made clicking sounds when they talked that the translation machines turned into words. Their skin was hard like armor and made scraping noises when they moved. Then there were dozens of other species. Some looked almost human, while others were so strange that Jin Woo could not figure out how they even moved or breathed. All of them had one thing in common, though. They all looked at humans like they were children who had wandered into an adult meeting. Counselor Vextar was the leader of the Vextari delegation. He was old even by their standards, and his scales had turned almost black with age. When he spoke, his voice was like rocks grinding together. The translation machine made it sound even worse. Jin Woo had to try hard not to make faces when Vextar talked. Today was supposed to be the day when they finally made decisions about fighting the Hive. The Hive was a collection of bug-like creatures that had been attacking colonies all across the galaxy for the past 50 years. They destroyed everything in their path and turned planets into empty rocks. Nobody knew where they came from or what they really wanted. Humans had only been part of galactic civilization for 200 years. Most of the other species had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. Some, like the Aldarians, claimed their civilization was over 10,000 years old. They never let humans forget how young and inexperienced they were. The meeting started with Vextar standing up and making a long speech about Vextari history and how they had been fighting wars since before humans even invented the wheel. Jin Woo had heard this same speech 12 times in the past week. It was always the same. The Vextari were ancient and wise. Humans were young and foolish. The Vextari knew best about everything. After Vextar finished, the Aldarian representative stood up. Her name was something with lots of clicking sounds that the translation machine turned into Counselor Bluemark. She was tall and moved like she was dancing even when she was just walking. Her speech was about how the Aldarians had the most advanced technology in the galaxy, and how their weapons were far superior to anything humans had ever built. So Young tried to interrupt Blue Mark several times. She wanted to talk about the human colonies that had successfully fought off hive attacks, but every time she started to speak, one of the aliens would talk over her or make dismissive gestures with their hands or tentacles or whatever they had. Klaxon Delegate was named something that sounded like rocks falling down a hill. The translation machine called him Counselor Stone Click. He made his speech about how the Klaxons had been fighting the hive longer than anyone else and how they understood the enemy better than these newcomer humans could ever hope to. Jinwoo felt his patience running out. He had been trained as a diplomat since he was 20 years old. He knew how to stay calm and polite, even when people were being rude. But this was getting ridiculous. The aliens wanted human ships, human soldiers, and human resources, but they did not want human ideas or human input in planning. Captain Yerin leaned over and whispered in Jinwoo's ear. She had been taking notes on her tablet and showed him the numbers. The aliens wanted humans to provide 40% of all the ships for the next big battle against the hive. They also wanted human colonies to provide food and supplies for the alien fleets. But in return, humans would get only 5% of the vote in planning the battle. The worst part was the battle plan itself. The aliens wanted to put all the human ships in the front lines where they would take the most damage. The alien ships would stay safely in the back and provide support. Human soldiers would be the first to die, while alien commanders made all the decisions from far away. Dr. So Young finally managed to get a chance to speak. She stood up and activated the hologram projector in the center of the table. The blue light formed into a three-dimensional map of the outer rim where most of the recent hive attacks had happened. She pointed to several star systems that were marked in green. These were human colonies that had fought off hive attacks in the past 6 months. Her voice was calm and professional as she explained how human defensive strategies had worked. She talked about the new shield technology that human scientists had developed and how human fighter pilots had learned to outmaneuver hive ships. The alien delegates barely looked at her presentation. Vextar was cleaning his claws with a small metal tool. Blue Mark was reading something on her own tablet. Stone Click was making quiet clicking sounds that might have been laughter. When Dr. So Young finished her presentation, Vextar looked up from his claws. He made a dismissive gesture with his hand and said that human victories were just luck. The hive had been testing their strength, not really trying to win. When the real battle came, human weapons would be useless against a full hive assault. Blue Mark agreed and added that human technology was primitive compared to what the aliens had been using for centuries. She said that humans should be grateful that the older species were willing to protect them. The best thing humans could do was follow orders and not try to think for themselves. Stone Click made more clicking sounds and said that the Klaxons had been studying the hive for longer than humans had been in space. Human observations were worthless compared to centuries of Klaxon experience. Jinwoo felt something cold settle in his stomach. These aliens did not see humans as allies or even equals. They saw humans as useful resources, like metal ore or fuel that could be used up and thrown away. The meeting went on for 6 more hours with the same pattern. Aliens making speeches about their own greatness and dismissing everything. Humans said. Finally, Vextar called for the official vote. The proposal was simple. Human fleets would be placed under alien command. Human colonies would provide supplies. Human soldiers would take the most dangerous assignments. But humans would have almost no say in how the war was fought. The vote was not even close. Every alien species voted yes. The human delegation was outnumbered 50-3. Jinwoo stood up slowly. He looked around the room at all the alien faces. Some looked smug. Others looked bored. A few seemed almost apologetic, but not enough to change their votes. His voice was quiet, but everyone in the room could hear him clearly. The Earth delegation withdraws from these negotiations. We will defend our own space in our own way. The room exploded with noise. Aliens jumping up and shouting in dozens of different languages. The translation machines could not keep up with all the voices at once. Jinwoo walked toward the door with Dr. So Young and Captain Yerin following behind him. Vextar called out that humans would regret this decision, that they would come crawling back within days begging to be allowed to return. Blue Mark laughed and said that humans would not last a week without alien protection. Stone Click made clicking sounds that definitely sounded like laughter now. Jin Woo did not turn around. He walked out of the meeting room and headed for the docking bay where the human shuttle was waiting. Behind him, he could hear the aliens still arguing and laughing. They thought this was funny. They thought humans were making a huge mistake. They had no idea what was really about to happen. The emergency alarms were screaming throughout Nexus Station. Admiral Taemin ran through the corridors toward the command center as red warning lights flashed on every wall. The station shook violently as massive explosions erupted in the space. Around it, he could hear the sound of metal tearing and the hiss of air leaking from damaged sections. Lieutenant Jun Ho was already at his station when Admiral Taemin burst into the command center. The main display screen showed something that made every person in the room stop breathing. The hive had arrived in numbers that nobody had ever imagined possible. The screen was filled with red dots, each representing a hive bioship. There were so many contacts that they looked like a red cloud, stretching across several star systems. The computer was still counting, but the numbers kept climbing past 1 million ships. Admiral Taemin had never seen anything like it in 30 years of military service, so the scouts are reporting that this is just the advance force. Jun Ho said, his voice shaking. The main hive fleet is still coming through the jump points. Our long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures that suggest millions more ships on the other side of the galaxy. Captain Ye Jin was leading a patrol squadron near the Barrier Nebula when the hive fleet emerged from dark space. The nebula was a massive cloud of colorful gas and cosmic dust that stretched across dozens of light years. It had always been considered a natural barrier that protected the core worlds from invasion. When the first hive ships appeared, Captain Ye Jin thought her sensors were malfunctioning. The readings showed bioships that were 10 times larger than anything the hive had used before. These were not the small raiding vessels that had been attacking colonies for years. These were massive war machines designed to destroy entire civilizations. Her communication system crackled to life as reports came in from across the galaxy. Every council fleet, every defense station, every military base was reporting the same thing. The hive was everywhere, and they were using technology that nobody had seen before. The bioships looked like giant insects made of metal and organic material. They had wings that sparkled with energy and eyes that glowed with an evil light. Some were as large as space stations with weapons that could crack planets in half. Others were smaller, but moved so fast that they appeared as streaks of light against the darkness of space. General Do-hyun watched the battle reports from his command center on Luna Base. The holographic displays showed the hive assault from multiple angles, and the picture was clear. The Galactic Council forces were being destroyed, faster than they could respond. Dr. Minho stood next to the general, studying the tactical data. "The hive has evolved, sir," he said quietly. "They are not using the same strategies or weapons that they used in previous attacks. Our intelligence reports show that they have adapted to every defensive system the aliens have been using." The truth was even worse than Dr. Minho realized. The hive had been studying alien civilizations for centuries. Every battle, every defeat, every captured ship had taught them something new. They had learned how Vextari shields worked, how Aldarian weapons fired, and how Klaxon defensive formations moved. Now they were using that knowledge to devastating effect. Hive weapons cut through alien shields like they were made of paper. Their ships moved in formations that countered every defensive strategy the Council had developed. Their tactics were so advanced that it seemed like they could predict what the aliens would do before the aliens knew it themselves. Battle of Barrier Nebula lasted 6 hours and became known as the worst military disaster in galactic history. Admiral Tae-min commanded the Council fleet from his flagship, Dark Thunder, leading over 50,000 ships from dozens of different species. The combined firepower was enough to destroy solar systems, but it was not enough to stop the hive. The battle began when Councillor Vextar gave the order to attack. He was commanding the operation from a massive Vextari dreadnought that was over 5 kilometers long and armed with weapons that could vaporize asteroids. The plan was simple: use overwhelming firepower to break through the hive lines and destroy their command ships. For the first hour, the plan seemed to work. The Council fleet advanced in perfect formation while their weapons lit up space with beams of energy and streams of missiles. The Hive ships took heavy damage, and several of the smaller bioships were destroyed completely. Then something changed. The Hive fleet began moving in patterns that made no sense to the alien commanders. Ships that had been flying in straight lines suddenly curved and twisted through space like they were dancing. The formations that had worked against previous Hive attacks became useless as the enemy adapted in real time. Captain Yejin was flying her patrol ship Swift Arrow as part of the left wing of the Council formation. She watched in horror as Hive bioships began targeting specific weak points in alien ship designs. The Hive knew exactly where to hit Vextari vessels to overload their power systems. They knew which sections of Aldarian ships contained the main computers. They knew how to disable Klaxon defensive arrays with surgical precision. The Council ships began exploding one by one as Hive weapons found their targets. Every species had different ship designs and defensive systems, but the Hive seemed to understand all of them. The aliens had thought their diversity was a strength, but the Hive turned it into a weakness. Admiral Taman watched his tactical display as red dots representing destroyed Council ships began outnumbering the green dots of surviving vessels. His own flagship was taking heavy damage as Hive bioships swarmed around it. Like angry insects, the Dark Thunder had been hit dozens of times and several sections were on fire. "Sir, we need to retreat," Jun Ho shouted over the sound of explosions. "The fleet is being destroyed. We cannot continue this battle." Admiral Taman gave the order that no Council commander had ever given before in a major battle. "Retreat, all ships, retreat immediately. Every vessel that can still move, fall back to the secondary defensive line." The retreat became a rout as surviving Council ships fled toward their home systems. Many vessels were too damaged to make the jump to hyperspace and were destroyed as they tried to escape. Others made it to safety, but were so badly damaged that they would need months of repairs when the battle ended. Less than 5,000 Council ships remained out of the original 50,000. The Hive had lost perhaps a few hundred vessels in return. It was the most one-sided military defeat in recorded galactic history. Back in human space, Dr. So Young was analyzing the battle data that human spy satellites had recorded. The information was disturbing but not surprising. The Hive had finally revealed their true capabilities, and they were far beyond what the aliens had imagined. She walked into General Do Hyun's office carrying a data tablet with her analysis. "General, the Hive has been holding back for centuries. Every attack, every raid, every battle was just them testing alien defenses. They have been learning and adapting while the Council thought they were winning small victories." General Do Hyun nodded grimly. He had suspected something like this might happen. The aliens had been too confident in their superiority. They had dismissed human warnings about Hive capabilities, and now they were paying the price. What the aliens did not understand was that humans had been studying the Hive differently. While alien scientists focused on building better weapons and stronger shields, human researchers had been trying to understand what the Hive really wanted. Where had they come from? Why were they attacking? What was their ultimate goal? Dr. Minho had spent months analyzing captured Hive technology and had discovered something important. The Hive ships contained star charts showing a path through the galaxy that led directly toward the core worlds. This was not a random invasion. It was a planned campaign with a specific objective. The Hive advance continued after their victory at Barrier Nebula. Within days, they had overrun the outer defensive lines and were attacking major alien colonies. The Vextari homeworld came under assault and had to be evacuated. The Aldarian research stations were destroyed one by one. The Klaxon military bases fell silent as Hive bioships swarmed over them. Captain Yejin managed to escape the battle in her damaged patrol ship and made it back to Nexus Station. The space station was in chaos as refugees from destroyed colonies arrived every hour. The medical bays were overflowing with wounded soldiers and civilians. The docking bays were packed with damaged ships that needed repairs. She sat in the station's communications center sending reports to what remained of the Council fleet. The message was always the same. The Hive was unstoppable. They had weapons and tactics that the aliens could not counter. They were advancing toward the core worlds, and nothing seemed able to slow them down. Then something unexpected happened. The Hive advance stopped completely at the edge of human space. The massive bioships that had been sweeping through alien territory like a deadly tide suddenly halted when they reached the boundary of the Sol system. Long-range sensors showed Hive scout ships approaching human colonies, but then the signals would simply disappear. Admiral Taemin received reports from his remaining scouts that made no sense. Hive forces were avoiding human space entirely. The bioships would approach the border, turn around, and find different routes toward their objectives. It was as if they were afraid of something. For the first time since the invasion began, the Hive had encountered something that made them hesitate. The galaxy held its breath, wondering what could pose.